It's your boy G, your local INFJ. I definitely got the Corona beard, the COVID beard going on right now. That's okay. It's okay. I'm a man of the times. I decided to do a video for you guys, and this is a video that first was posted on Facebook Live, my uncle's Facebook Live, who was nice enough to have me on the show again, his Walking While Black Facebook channel. And after showing it to a few people, I was told that it was helpful, and so I decided to make it available here on YouTube for you guys. So I'll post in the description if you guys want to go check out his channel. We talked about racial injustice in the country, and specifically this time we talked about it from the point of view of the new generation, the young generation, the recently adulting generation. So I guess I'm the oldest of that generation, and my cousins are also on the show. They're younger than me, and we are all black people who were raised in either predominantly white or very diverse environments. None of us were raised in the city, and so we talk a little bit about our perspective on race, our generation's perspective on race, and I was told that it was helpful, so I decided to post it for you guys here on my channel. Let me know what you think. And again, if you guys are looking for the content, the original content, I will put a link in the description. Again, this is my Uncle Duey, so Duey Evans, and my Uncle Joseph Phillips. You might know my Uncle Duey Evans. He's the one that I appeared with a few weeks ago on his Walking While Black channel. He's co-hosting with my Uncle Joseph C. Phillips. You might know him formerly from The Cosby Show, from the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why, and he is co-host on this as well. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy.
Welcome to Brooks Brothers Live. I want to thank you for being here with us tonight. My name's Duey Evans. Me, myself, and my cousin, my brother from another mother, Joseph. We do this every week. We get together and we talk about some family-related issues. We are gentlemen of a certain age. We've lived a bunch of life, hopefully have a whole bunch of life left to live. And we're here to share our experiences with you. How you doing this week, Joe?
Hey, I'm good. How was your 4th?
Good. I don't think I've ever called you Joe. I've called you a whole bunch of things, but I've never called you Joe. Until now. I can't say that anymore.
Yeah, it was shocking to hear it come out, because in all these years, I've never heard that. And, only occasionally did your mother call me that. And my mother only called me that when she was trying to be playful. Come on, Joe, But It's okay. It's okay. I'm okay. Wasn't that earth-shattering? But listen, I'm glad to hear that your 4th of July was good. Mine was okay. I went up the street, bought some ribs, had some beans and potato salad, and nursed my dog through the explosions. But today we have and I'm kind of glad, that it comes right after the 4th, which was is a family time. And so today we have a family show, as we're bringing on our family, or members of our family, the next generation, so to speak, of the Brooks family. Sam Phillips, who is my youngest son, Haley Evans, which is your oldest daughter, and my pretend daughter, and Garrett Ashe, which is my older sister's oldest son, and someone who I was just saying, I remember when he was born, where I was when he was born, and trying not to feel too old, but we want to welcome them to the show and the conversation we're going to have with them.
You know, it's interesting because on your branch of the Brooks clan, so your sister has 2 boys and you have 3 boys. On my branch, my sister has 2 girls and I have 3 girls. So 5 boys, 5 girls in the Brooks lineage at that level. And we have, 3 of them here tonight. Welcome, everybody. How are you?
Hey, pretty good. How are you guys?
Speak up, don't.
Yeah, I'm good.
Doing pretty
If
well.
you've been watching, you've met Garrett before when Joseph had to be engaged with something else. So I guess 3 or 4 weeks ago, Garrett subbed in as co-host, and he generally watches and comments. And I know that last week, as we were talking about, well, a lot of it was about whether we should actually use the word nigger or if it should stay the N word, or where does that word fit into how we talk about ourselves. And you had some comments, and can you share with us some of the thoughts that you were having while you were watching it?
Yeah, sure. First of all, that was an awesome episode. I was like transfixed the whole time. But yeah, you guys made some really interesting points about, particularly about what's changed with the new generation. You guys seemed like you guys came across like you were really proud, actually, of the way that our generation has kind of stepped up during this whole situation where racial injustice is kind of boiling over, and you kind of wondered, what changed here. For a long time, it seemed like we were the generation of of feelings, of sensitivity. What changed to really get us engaged and get us enraged even about this whole situation? So I guess I would approach it from 2 places. One, I would say that the frustration and the hurt was always there. I think that in a way it manifested itself differently than it did with you guys because of the work, the civil rights work that you guys did, that my father, that Uncle Dewey, Uncle Joey, that all you guys did. I think it became less acceptable for people to be overtly racist. I think that a lot of the racial bias that people had, it was forced underground. That they didn't all of a sudden change just because they weren't allowed to be racist out loud anymore. So I think they were more covert about it, and I think all the systematic racism, a lot of that was still there, but again, that's not in your face. So I think it was harder for us to be enraged and to lash out when the things that we were getting thrown at us were less punches in the face and more whispers. So I think it just manifested itself, at least I can only speak for myself, but in like this frustration, and this like, guys, like I'm trying to call this out, but there's no one really to lash out. There's really no posters to tear down, no rallies to raise your fist in. So I think this moment has given us a chance to voice what we've been feeling for a really long time. And I think that coronavirus has also kind of given, I guess, turned up the heat on whatever rage we did have. It's a frustrating moment.
Well,
and it's also,
Yeah, I think that keeping people indoors for 4 weeks can generate that kind of boiling over to where you light a match and things explode. Garrett, there was something I was going to comment on. It's interesting to hear because I hadn't really thought about the idea that there was not anything real tangible to grasp onto. Whispers is how you put it. I remember growing up, and it was just not that long ago, when
Yes, it was.
For instance, your mother yeah, just as long as with you. But I remember when your mother had a white boyfriend. That was a big deal. Even when I was in high school, interracial dating was not just the given. it was a big deal. I remember a friend of mine had to go to her rabbi and have a big conversation about it. Her parents were very who I loved, who I grew up. This is one of my oldest friends, by the way. So I knew her parents, was in Cub Scouts with her brother, but her dating another black student was an issue for them. Now, in your generation, I might even toss it to Sam or to Haley because they are a bit younger than you, but in their generation, this kind of interaction seemed to be quite normal. No one even thought about it twice. So I'm curious about the types of slights that that might generate the same type of rage or that kind of frustration that you described when socially things had really changed quite a bit from even from when I was your age.
Yeah, I will leave that to Haley or some of you guys have examples.
Well, one of you guys might want to jump in, and Sam, for instance, let me ask you that question because, quite honestly, in once the demonstrations began, I saw you out there. There was a clip that we shared of you on the news, and you were sharing some things, and I was actually kind of surprised. There were things that I was hearing from you that I had not expected to hear, given where you grew up and the way in which you grew up. So can you speak
and
to...
Sam, before you jump in, just so you know, on this broadcast, you have been nicknamed Samuel X. That is who you are at this point in time.
Samuel X.
All right. Well, I mean, what exactly was the question?
Are you suggesting that my question was not clear? What I'm asking, Garrett's point was, I'll give this a try, and then if it's still not clear, I'll let Duey jump in and try to ask it. Garrett was saying that for the longest time that there was this frustration, but it didn't seem like there was really there was no place to point to it. That instead of maybe the shouts that your uncle and I received as we were growing up, that the racism, the bias was really in whispers. And so what I was saying is that society has changed quite a bit in terms of racial interaction. And the example I gave was interracial dating. Whereas when I was your age, this was still a big thing. People gave it a lot of thought. People looked at it and noticed it. Whereas now, and my impression with you growing up was that people just dated. It was not an issue. White friends, black friends. And so my question is, what was it really what were the whispers? What were you hearing that caused the amount of anger that we're seeing now?
So, in my opinion, I feel like the racism was just more hidden. It wasn't blatant out front. It was more, embedded within our government, within our society. It was hidden. And so it hurts more when you grow up and you learn all about the civil rights movement, Malcolm X, MLK, and you are told that, all this stuff is over and that no more segregation and we're living in harmony. But then you grow up and you get educated and you start to see all these things, inconsistencies within the government, within society of, black people and minorities being treated differently. And you learn about all of these systems that you didn't even think twice about. And then you read about and you're like, well, hold up, this is the same thing that was going on in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s. So I think what angers us most is that things haven't really changed. They give us an impression that they have, but within society, within the government, things have not changed. I think that's what hurts people the most.
Yeah,
it's like
I would venture to say. Oh, are you done, Sam? I'm sorry.
I was gonna say an analogy. If someone lies to your face right then and you call them out on the lie, it's done. But when you find out someone has been lying to you for years and is going behind your back and doing things, and then you find it out, it hits harder because they've been doing it behind your back and they know they're doing something wrong and they've just been doing it and doing it and doing it. So I feel like that's our situation within our generation, and I feel like our generation is a little more educated at a younger age, and that makes us more vocal. I feel like more aggressive because we're young. We just act out. So I think that is the situation that we're in right now.
Hey, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I would venture to say that's the difference between racism and then systemic racism, right? So what we're seeing now, what I think many, many people, including myself and the two other people here, are upset about is systemic racism. It is the things that are embedded into society, into the police force, into the government, into public schooling, into neighborhoods and grocery stores, and the way people are treated on the street, that we are upset about. I mean, I can agree with Sam. As many people know, I grew up in Atlanta, definitely in the Southeast, to say the very least, where Martin Luther King is heralded everywhere, right? Especially in Atlanta. And I distinctly remember the first time I went to the Martin Luther King Museum in Atlanta, and it was by far one of my favorite places. I used to ask my mother to go all the time. I had a videotape of like the speech on Washington or the March on Washington that I brought to my second grade class to watch for fun one day. And we found out we couldn't end up watching because you saw people getting lynched on the streets. And it is that passion that I had as a young kid where it was like, this is wonderful. Like, this is the place where I'm from. This is amazing. Like, this all happened here. Everything's different. I'm allowed to be whoever I am. And then to grow up and to find that, okay, maybe not. Maybe we lied a little. Maybe we said a little just to make you feel better. I know, Dad, you have for sure said in the South, at the very least, the racism is very covert. It's very bless your heart and hidden and covert. I think in people's niceties, and yet I find.
Let me just. Sorry to interrupt you, Haley. My question really was about, and you're going right there, but I want to clarify for the three of you. Is my question really was about personal experience. So let me be more clear. And Dewey, you tell me, because you may not have even experienced this.
So you're
growing up in Denver. We were there was we liked to ice skate. There was alpine skating, which was close to where we could go. There were days that we could not go there. Not that there was any official rule that we couldn't go there, but to go there was to fight, to be called nigger, and to be chased away. So, Sam, I don't know that you ever experienced that. You may have. I've never heard that story. Garrett, Haley, have you experienced that type of hatred, racism, bigotry?
It was
Sam,
one of you jump at that.
So now I kind of see where you're going, what the question was exactly. I feel like now it's like you said, it's not like in your face racism. It's little whispers, and it's stuff like growing up. Me and the only other black girl in elementary school, we were constantly, people thought that we were brother and sister, just because we were the only two black kids. I would see people, when I go to government official places or just talk to school counselors or whatever, they would always ask if my parents were divorced, because I guess minorities have a higher rate of divorce, and they wouldn't ask the other kids that. Um, People would, touch my hair randomly and just say, "Oh, your hair feels so nice." It's like small stuff like that. It doesn't feel right, but it's not necessarily wrong, but it's more just ignorant.
So did you guys
Um,
know that at the time when it was happening? Because I would say that you were all raised in an environment where there were undoubtedly many times where there weren't many people of color in that space with you, right? You grew up in, your parents took went to great ends to give you the opportunity to receive the kind of education that is privileged to those, that don't look like us by and large, right? And so, did you experience those things with the knowledge that they were happening at the time, when somebody, instead of patting you on the shoulder, patted you on the head to feel your hair and things like that? Or is it only now, as you look back, that you're recognizing that those things were happening?
So I can say, at least personally for myself, it changed as I got older. So when I was really little, I was, the type of person who I didn't even understand that I was black. I said, like, some of my white friends had more of a tan than I did. So I said, "Are they black, mom and dad?" Like, I didn't get it. But the same thing that happened to Sam started happening to me, the touching on the head, always feeling my hair. I would come back home. I'd complain to my parents about it. I'd say they won't stop doing that. And then that's when I started to understand why they were doing it. And of course, when I get into middle school, definitely high school, I had a thorough understanding of what it was that was happening. I would say, even if it is harder to point to the big things that happened, because again, people weren't allowed to do the big things because of all the progress that your guys' generation made. But I think there were things like the patting on the head. There were things there's differences in the way that we were talked to versus the way that our white friends were talked to. I think being very light, I kind of got that middle experience where I saw the difference between how I was talked to, how my white friends were talked to, and then how my darker skinned black friends were talked to. At one of my jobs, I had a coworker who refused to refer to my darker skinned friend as anything but Skippy. It just, that kind of thing, just very like degrading, dehumanizing. Now, did he ever say anything about how I hate blacks? No, he was not allowed to, but he showed his disdain in microaggressions, just in the same way that we see, like, biased hiring practices and all those type of things.
Haley, you're shaking your head yes. I'm sorry, Dewey.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Go ahead.
No, I definitely can relate to light skin privilege. I think to some extent, there's. I mean, I don't even have what I would consider like mixed girl hair. I don't have like the kinky, coily, situation going on, so I can pass if need be, or if people want to or want me to, I guess. But I think for me, a lot of what I've experienced has been, yeah, but you're not really black, or yeah, but you don't talk black, or you don't hang out with the black kids, so that you don't
Right, so
you don't really understand.
Yeah, so there's the question, right? So Haley, half of her family, so your mom is white and you, that side of your family. In Garrett's case, his grandparent on his
Grandmother, yeah.
mom's, so his grandmother was married to, or had a child with someone who was white, and so therefore he is 1/4 white. Sam grew up in a family where your mom's side is about the lightest skinned people I can imagine, with red hair and all, but you're also
Red hair,
spent your life as an elite gymnast in what is, largely still a predominantly white sport, right? We can talk about Simone Biles and Gabby Douglas all we want. It's still predominantly a white person's sport. What did you guys feel like was the pressure to conform to the non-stereotypical or the stereotypical person who grew up in privilege in the white environment and spoke the Queen's English and did all of those things? Because I know my mom wanted us to be able to fit into corporate America. That was part of what my upbringing was all about, was be able to speak the language so that you can fit in anywhere you want. And I've certainly find myself to this day code talking when I wasn't necessarily brought up in an environment where that was anything that I ever did. But now, having spent a lot of time working in inner city tennis programs, I find myself at times code talking when talking to others. What has y'all's experience been in terms of how you felt like what was permissible in terms of how black can you be?
Can I add to that question? Oh, sorry. Just for Haley, because I know she mentioned people were telling her, you don't even hang out with black people, you don't count. Haley, were you mostly getting that from your white friend crowd, or was it from both black and white, or where were you getting that from?
I would say my white friends. I wouldn't say that I grew up in any of the schools I went to where there was a large enough black population for me to even say that I had a black community of friends. I may have had one, I may have had two, I may have had a couple in my classes, but I wouldn't say that it was, we were all best friends, which I think to some extent I was okay with. In my mind, it was like, I don't have to be friends with just black people. I'm allowed to be friends with whoever I want. And yet I also found myself hearing these things from my white friends, and wondering, am I missing out on an experience? Am I excluding myself? Or am I being excluded because of the way I speak or the way I dress or the way I look? Am I being discluded from a group?
Sorry, just to clarify, are you being excluded from the black group because of, or from the white group? What do you mean?
The former, from the black group. Yes.
Okay. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, so I actually wrote about this in my TED Talk during the school year. I did a TED Talk on whitewashing and how it affects the black community. But I found it very hard on both sides because while, I was light-skinned, and I'm not even mixed, but I passed because of my lighter skin tone and my just features, I guess. The way I spoke and, where we grew up, predominantly white Jewish neighborhood. Obviously, I had a lot of white friends, and the bigger black population, I met more black people once I, got into middle school, because then some of the inner city kids started coming in, and then high school. I always felt I couldn't really vibe or connect with them, and I got words thrown at me like I'm not even black, and they were even talking about because of maybe how I dress or what I talk like, because of where I lived and just my skin tone, which is the most ignorant thing. And I heard a lot of that growing up, and I just thought that was so dumb. A kid once told me that an Indian kid was blacker than me because he was darker than me, and that was
I have had multiple white friends tell me that they are blacker than I am.
Yeah. These are black students. Yeah, Dad. So I always felt, but then I would hang out with my white friends, and I always felt a little distant because, obviously I'm not white and I had different experiences, and they might have said stuff, microaggressions or something, and I would just have to sit there and take it. So it was very weird on both sides. I could inch my way in, but I never felt settled in a community.
Yeah. So I would say that that is perfectly said. That feeling of okay, yeah, you're allowed in the room, but you're not sitting in the chair next to me, really. You're not really family. Yeah, that's really well said. I kind of experienced the same
You can
thing.
hear, but you can't contribute.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
And like
Or yeah,
it
I
was
remember. I think Haley even said earlier, being the token. Like, if they needed me to be the token black person, I was always the token black person. They'd laugh at my jokes when they weren't funny, but not take me seriously. They in high school had trouble finding a girlfriend, like all that stuff. Um, but I think the thing for me, and this is what I noticed, is that the black community, any problem that they had, I could solve it easily by just talking to them and letting them know, like, hey, I have I have experiences that are just like yours. Yeah, I'm light skinned, but we share this in common. We share this in common. And I always felt like, black people in America, we're all like, we don't even know what countries we come from, right? But we're all the same because we share somewhat of a black experience. And so I felt like the black community was more inclusive in that way. If I pushed my way in, versus the white community, they would always have the door open, but they'd never actually let me really sit at the table. And I felt like a lot of times they would use that I wasn't black enough because they didn't want to hear the black things I was saying. That would happen a lot. I tried to give my perspective on the black experience. I tried to speak up against something that was happening that wasn't fair, and that's when they'd come with, "Oh, you're not even really black. You don't even really count." It was more to dismiss my point of view. That was my experience, Liz.
So,
yeah, and
Garrett, you've graduated. I'm sorry, Sam, you were going to say?
I was just gonna say, like, it was very disappointing to, like, because of course, like, I made friends. Obviously, I had black friends, but some of the black people in the larger group, like, I was excluded just because, like, right off the bat, they saw how I dressed, they saw my skin tone, and they just deemed that I wasn't black enough just because of that. And it's complicated.
Sorry, as your father, I'm sitting here going, what was wrong with the way he was dressed? I can't. I mean, I'm trying to think back on how you were dressed. You've always been, like, very fashionable. So
Yeah,
I'm very confused by that.
Well, like, they come in, they're wearing joggers or, like, basketball, Air Jordans, jeans, sagging a little, baseball jerseys, stuff like that. And you know that, like, I never wore that stuff. Like, I wore Vans a lot, Converse, like, H&M, so, like, I guess I wasn't hood. That's what it was. I wasn't hood. And in their eyes,
what is so
black
funny
is
about this?
hood.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You want to know what's so funny about that, and then then we'll get back to it. But Dewey, I'm going to share this with you. Want to know what's so funny about that? Because he said, "Oh, I wore H&S." You know how many black people were in that store over Christmas? The idea that he had some friends, knuckleheads, who, "Oh, that's H&S." Yeah, where do you think your mother was? I saw your mom up there over Christmas on the holiday shopping up there just like I was. Anyway, I'm sorry. What I wanted to ask is, I know Haley and Sam are in college now. Garrett, you graduated, but I'm curious if any of this changed when you got to a university. I mean, which is supposed to be, our universities, this open-mindedness, this woke culture now. What is it like on the campus? Sam?
Yeah, and Sam's at a big, at University of Nebraska, and a big athlete. And Haley is in school closer to home now, but she went to a very small Christian school out in Santa Barbara, California, which was probably a very different. I'm not sure there were very many black people at all at that school.
There were 25 of us.
Wow, the fact that you actually know how many there were.
No.
And I was number 25.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like it's less about the university and more about the state, because I am in Lincoln, Nebraska, and that's not the most diverse city or state. So I definitely had a lot of people asking me questions. Like, I got a ton of people asked me if it was allowed to say the N-word in a song. like too many people. And so I was just thinking to myself, like, oh my God, what were you doing before I got here? Like, what? But I just think to myself, like, people ask me, like, oh my God, like, Lincoln, Nebraska. And I just, like, in my mind, I say it's better that I am here so I can educate them than if I'm not here, because then nothing gets done. So,
You don't
but
feel
I've
like you
definitely
have
had
the
my
pressure
fair-
to speak for all Black people?
a little bit, yeah, especially because me and Khalil are like the only two Black kids on the team. Um, we kind of gotta like hold our own and make sure that we're not being disregarded or run down or just being used as a token friend. Um, but besides that, I would say it's been pretty within the college and university side. It's been inclusive. It's been pretty good. I haven't run into any problems. Besides just people being a little ignorant and asking me questions like that, because then it's like, no. But with the people though, outside of the college, I've gotten stares. I've gotten some looks. I've gotten people calling me a dumb monkey when I was walking out to protest. So,
Wow.
so yeah, stuff like that. But for the most part, I've been pleasantly surprised. So,
So I'm going to take this back to our generation for a second there, Mr. Phillips Sr. I've been running into enough white people that want to know how they can fix it, so to speak. And I'm been trying to tell them, not really looking for you to fix anything. There's nothing you can do. What I really want you to do is to not be so defensive and really sit back and listen for a change instead of trying to pontificate and lord over us of how we should be doing things. What's your experience at this point in time? I guess with younger people, there's probably not as much them asking how they can fix it. So, but what's been your experience at this point?
I'm curious. I think, Dewey, I think that's a great question, and because I actually think there's probably more. And I'm curious to see, but my bet is that they're more from their generation who are asking those questions. I've had just a couple of people ask me, kind of DM me, friends, and you're not going to like my response, which is cash payments. Cash at me. That's how you can fix it. I need money, a job, but honestly, I wouldn't even know what to say to that, because that whole idea makes me uncomfortable, particularly coming from people who if I've known them for a very long time. I mean, I'm trying to think. There was a woman who I just love her to death, and back when we were in school, and she was like one of the prettiest women I've ever seen in my life, and I wanted to date her so very badly. So, when I'm getting now, how can I fix this? Well, you could have dated me, 40 years ago, we could have gone out. That's how you could fix it. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Are people asking you this question? If so, what is your response?
I've had multiple people ask me. I've had maybe not a ton, 3 to 5, perhaps, ask me at least for resources. Where can I go? Where can I learn? What do I need to know? And I think at the very beginning, I was very, very, very willing to go do the research, go find things. I think if you go to one of the links in my bio on my Instagram, there's still a compiled list of some lists that I already found compiled that I just shared with the world. And then
Haley, just to interrupt, is my book on that list? Is my book on that list?
I'll add
What
it.
he talk like a white boy?
All three of you need to, as soon as we hang up, include my list or my book on your list that you are sending to your friends. Okay, please.
I cited your book in my whitewashing TED Talk essay.
There you go. That's my boy.
I think I quickly realized 10, 14 days in, this is my job. I'm doing the Googling just like you are perfectly capable of doing. I am compiling the list just as you are perfectly capable of compiling the list. I do not have some magic power in me that just knows where all of the Black-owned businesses in Dallas are. That's not something I just like inherently know because of my Blackness. I don't just, know every book about systemic racism written in the last 35 years that could be semi-prevalent to you just to hand off to you. Sure, I know some names, right? But I came across those names in original ways, and maybe to some extent it is because I have been, privy to conversations within the Black community and within Black families. But I also think that I just pay attention. I think if you just look around for 10 seconds, maybe if you go follow an extra 3 to 5 Black people on your Twitter, you'll hear a name enough, or you'll see a name enough, or you'll see a book cover enough that you'll be like, oh, maybe I should look into that. Maybe I should know more about that term. It's that easy. I took that weight off of my shoulders and realized it's not my job to educate you. If you're willing to ask me about my personal experience, that's something that I'm willing to share with you.
Folks.
I'm willing to share with you our, intimate relationship as far as it goes with racism. So like if my friend is asking me, what have I specifically done that has contributed to you feeling a certain way, then yes, of course, I'll share that. But I'm not going to go list every Ta-Nehisi Coates essay, novel, and piece just to give you peace of mind and make you feel like you did your research. That's not my job.
Yeah,
I totally agree. It got to a point where I was, and I got a fair share of people asking me, like, what can I do? Is there, like, I've signed petitions, I've read these, papers, donated, blah, blah, blah. Like, is there anything more I can do? Like, and I'm just like, there's always Google. Like, legit. If you don't know something, just Google it. Like, you don't even need to read a book, just Google.
Information ignorance is a choice.
Yeah.
So
that was my answer. Just Google it.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I think I agree with both of you guys in the sense that for a while, it was like one person a day at least was asking me like, hey, so talk to me about Black pain, or hey, so what can I do to help? So I think that you guys are right that a lot of this can be done if people were willing to put in the work and do the research on their own, and it shouldn't fall on our shoulders. But at least for myself, I feel like it's almost like I don't feel pressure from them to help and to, teach. I feel like this is a moment, and I want to make sure we as Black people capitalize, that we capitalize this moment. So I think that comes from me, and that's why I started like a YouTube page where I talk about covert racism, where I talk about the Black experience a little bit, because I want to make sure that we actually create lasting change in this moment. And I think our part can be more than just, regurgitating facts or, things that they can Google. We can talk to them about concepts that maybe we're privy to because of our experience. Like, what have we gone through? Because while that seems anecdotal, I think that's what really affects people. I think when they hear a story, like the stories that you guys have just told, like tonight, when they hear that, they're like, oh, I had no idea Black people were going through this. And we give them a whole new way to see the things that are happening every day in their life, the things that have already been happening, now they can see them. And so that's what we can do. That's the role of teacher that we can play.
Garrett, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad that you said that. Haley, I'll come right to you. I just wanted to say, and I think that this is something that Duey has talked about for the longest time, is the power in personal narrative, in stories. And I really have been feeling in these last, certainly very strongly over the last week, that one of the good things to come out of this is that more and more people are offering their stories. And I'm really amazed at the number of, number of everyone who is going, what? I had no idea. And I don't like the term microaggressions, but a lot of the stuff that people are describing is not really microaggressions. Some of it is outright bigotry, hatred. Some of it is annoying hair type of stuff that I think all of us have gone through. And some of it is rudeness, but almost all of it is really based in how we treat one group of people versus the other people. If we see that you are black, then we have, this reaction. We go to anger 0 to 50 very quickly, or less quickly, or what have you. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead with what you were going to say.
I think, kind of combining what the two of you were saying, I think there's a level of ignorance that white people get to have. I mean, it's called white privilege, right? But there's a level of ignorance that they are able to have and to get away with. I did a poll on my Instagram, I don't know, probably the week the George Floyd video was released. And everything was really, really intense. And I asked people if they had heard two different words or two different terms. One was redlining, and the other was food deserts. And I had about 70% of my followers tell me that they had never heard either of those terms before.
Yeah. Yeah, the ignorance is overwhelming.
I was like, okay, well, I would say of that 70%, 50% of you went to same school district as I was. Okay, so you can't say that you weren't taught, because I know you were, because I was. You learned at the same place I did, same classroom, same curriculum, right? And so there's a level of, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not going to save it in my head. It's not
that's true, because that is how the brain works. The brain's a filter, and everything that we don't want to know, we discard. That's just a basic function of how the brain works, which is why we see things that we're interested in, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. And I suspect it's why people see racism so much. Those that have been very much attuned to it see it because they are attuned to it, that they look for it in everything. The brain looks for it in everything. And there are those that see it nowhere and don't see it anywhere. And so there are things which are right under people's noses, which they see very differently than other people. I'm in the world of tennis, so very much a white people sport, but everybody in tennis, just about everybody in the world, knows who Arthur Ashe is. Arthur Ashe had a program called the Safe Passage Foundation, pretty significant program. I was talking to somebody who is in the world of tennis and of my age, so not someone who's young, who didn't know that the Safe Passage Foundation had even existed. And so how can you not know of something that's pretty significant in your sport unless that part of the sport wasn't something that you cared about? And so therefore you just didn't notice it, because I know that if you looked at Tennis Magazine or the publications, as a member of the United States Tennis Association, everybody gets this rag. It gets mailed to your house every month. And there were articles on this program. It was enormous. But so to not known about it, that you had to be skimming through and, oh my goodness, there are a bunch of black faces on here. Or even if it's an article about Arthur Ashe, I'm not looking at it. I'm going and looking for Chris Evert and Jimmy Connors on their, whatever they're doing and being fools. And so it is true that the ignorance is willful. Or has been willful, and consequently there are a lot of people who are now saying, I need to know, and maybe they didn't want to be ignorant, but because of what they were around, the things which interested them, because it's what other people around them were interested in, they gravitated towards something, and now they're looking to see, well, can you tell me about, and I'm like, just keep looking. If you make yourself aware, your brain will filter out the other stuff, and now all of a sudden these things that you didn't know existed will be everywhere. You will just notice them everywhere you look. I think that's one of the things that we have to do is to tell people, if you just kind of concentrate on looking for them, you will see them too, whether they be microaggressions or outright racism or whatever it happens to be.
I think that's so well said. I think that we don't have to do all the legwork and compiling all the information for them. What we have to do is help them understand what they're looking at. That doesn't take very long. That takes, talking about our experience a little bit, talking about how to notice something when they see it, and then pushing them to keep going, right? And so I think that was super well said. They'll start to notice. Hopefully, they'll start to notice if they actually care now. When they have the right constructs to see what's in front of them.
I was looking for this quote I wanted to share with you, and then I'm going to follow up with a question. This is Frederick Douglass, and you may have heard this before, some of you or all of you. What shall we do with the Negro? And he responds in part, one of the things he said is, do nothing with us. Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. And then he skips on. He says, basically, and if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask, give him a chance to stand on his own legs. Let him alone. I skipped down through that, but essentially, I mean, you get the idea. And so, to the question, what shall we do? And white America asking, what can we do? What shall we do? That has generally been my response is, you don't have to do anything except leave us alone, treat us equally, treat us as you would anyone else, let us stand on our own 2 feet, don't put extra burdens on us, let us fall if that is what should happen. But I'm curious from the three of you, what is your answer to white America? What can they do? Are there answers as we move forward, as you grow older and take the reins? What can they do? What are the answers to race in America? Or do you have them?
I mean, I don't have them. I think to some extent it's just being willing to widen your existence. I want to absolutely no part in your month where you're only shopping from black stores. I don't want. Find 3 black stores that you absolutely love and would shop at regularly like you would any other store, and then just add it into the rotation of stores that you regularly shop at, right? I think to some extent they need a contextualization and they need a framework to know what they're looking for, kind of like what Garrett said. I had a friend who told me that she didn't her mother is a nurse in a hospital, and she says that, every black patient is treated the exact same way and that there's no issue, and she doesn't understand why black people don't trust the medical community. It was like, oh, okay, so I need you at the very, 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 very least to go to an inner city and see how many Whole Foods there are around, how many 7-Elevens. And then I want you to understand, the difference in diet, okay? And then I want you to understand how that can play into people's health. And then I want you to go and circle back, and I want you to go look at late 1800s to early 1900s and understand the relationship that the black community then, and then understand how generations work, and then tie in the framework that we have today, right? But I don't want to have to be the one to walk your hand with you to South Dallas and be like, oh, look, there's Dr. Joe's here.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's so I would say it's funny because Uncle Joey, you mentioned, the leave us alone, leave us be. And I think that was the primary vehicle for, moving towards equality in your generation. It's because there was so much of this, like I said before, in your face racism, leave us be, treat us equally. Now, I think because so much of it is subvert or covert, I think saying leave us be there's a confusion with that, because a lot of white people are saying, oh yeah, we already are leaving you be. There's no racism. It's not a big deal. So we have to explain to them why there is racism, what it looks like now, so they can see it, and then leave us be. If that makes sense. Like, understand what's happening, and then treat us equally.
We must change the framework from which they understand, look at racism.
Yes.
And
I think a lot of that. Yeah, a lot of that is understanding where things came from. Why are things the way that they are? Oftentimes people just go through and they believe, well, it's always been like that, and it's, nobody put it in place. But looking at why are certain things the way that they are? Why do some people push for more private prisons? What is a private prison? What is the economy that's built around that? And consequently, if we have to support it, what are the laws that are in place? We've been having a ongoing discussion for, I guess, the last month or 5 weeks, where Joseph has really been saying that his proposal is just get rid of the war on drugs, that it is to prop up a system which does nothing for us and everything against us. And then you want to talk about the fact that there are not enough two-parent households and things. Well, why is that? Because you're taking, crack cocaine and you have it incarcerating people, where people walking around with an 8-ball of regular old cocaine, they're getting a slap on the wrist, and that has created some of the things. And I think so, helping people understand why certain laws are in place so that they can look a little bit deeper and see things a little bit more deeply will help, because it's not all about, what happened to me. That something might happen to me because somebody just didn't like the way that I act, because sometimes I'm an ass, right? That's just the reality of it. So just because somebody treats me as if I'm an ass doesn't mean it's because I was black. But if there are things...
your mother used to say, sometimes people don't like you because you look too good, So.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Pointing people towards the data and the stats and the systems that are in place that are creating the unfairness, and so they can see it in a new light, and they can see how it, keeps this narrative keeps this racism and keeps the systematic injustice going. I think that's important. That's the only way we're going to get a change, is if we point them in that direction.
Sam, what you got to say? I'm going to go to you, and then I got to go ask your dad about apparently this story that my mom told him about somebody who was passing or trying to pass. And he promised that he was going to share that this week. But what do you have for us?
In my eyes, I think that whether we like it or not, we need the white majority on our side so that change can happen. It might not sound right, but we're in that state in America where a white person will listen to a white person more than they will to a black person, especially coming from a place of authority. So I think that we just need, people who aren't black to see black stories, to hear black stories, and to recognize them, and to, like you guys said, see the data, educate themselves and see everything that's wrong so that they can help us make the change. And so education, and it's not enough just being silent and being not racist. You need to be anti-racist, which means taking actions to prevent racism and to combat racism. I was talking about this with my coach the other day, and a couple of black alumni from the Nebraska gymnastics organization. But if, a white team captain or a white person sees another white person, being racist or saying something racist, and then they go to the black and say, hey, you should do something about them because they're being racist. Don't come to me. You should say something too. Right. It's if he's being racist, he's being racist. So you need to, call him out for it too. Because if it's just us, there's always going to be one of us around to call them out. And that's the problem, these white communities who all they know is
And then
they're white communities. And
and then all they seem to think, oh, it's just black people complaining again.
exactly.
I haven't done anything.
So
I'm innocent. They're too sensitive.
we need to make a world where we don't have to march for our own lives. Other people will march, for our lives as well. Do you get what I'm saying?
I love that.
They need to
I think
hold people accountable too. It's not just our job to fight this fight. It's everyone's job because it's something that's wrong happening and it needs to be fixed. So we just need
willing
the
to call
majority
out
of
people too.
Yeah, and hold people accountable.
You have to be willing to say, like, I was with my Hispanic best friend the other day, and we were next to this white girl who was kind of our friend, and we were popping champagne, and I squealed, and she said, "Oh, you're such a basic white girl." And my best friend looked at her and said, "Or she's just a person who screamed when champagne popped, and that's just who she is. She doesn't have to be white to act that way." She was like, "Oh, it was just a joke." And it was like, yeah, but
It's not a joke.
identified her as something that she doesn't identify as. And in that moment, like, I pulled her aside later and I said, like, you said something that you didn't have to say. I could have said that. I could have done that. But you took that upon yourself as a non-black person to say that wasn't cool. You can't do that.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's the awesome thing about this movement right now is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see, like, in the civil rights marches of from before, I didn't see this amount of white inclusion. I didn't see this many white people marching, this many white people speaking up, this type of inclusivity, and I think that might be the next step. Is that we actually do have the white majority coming on board. And if we can bring them on board in the right way, maybe we can actually change, how America thinks about race permanently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this brings me to, I now want to know, I don't know if we have enough time to get into it, and we actually don't, but I'm curious if you feel that the movement is being co-opted, infiltrated, taken over, redirected for other purposes. If you can, maybe we have enough time for a quick answer from everyone, and I can give the story next week. I can give the story.
Yeah, so let's go speed round and give everybody, you got a minute, 90 seconds tops, to say what your belief is about whether this has been co-opted or not, and we'll kind of go youngest to oldest. So back to Sam. What are your thoughts?
Very uncomfortable sometimes or confused. I'll be in the protests and I love to see them there with us, but I feel a bit uncomfortable when I hear, these white guys who are like, seem very, those skater guys who just seem very like anti-government, start the chants and stuff. And it's like, thank you, but like, I don't know. It's very weird. It's a weird feeling because you feel like they're like too into it, but they should be that into it, right? Very weird. Very weird. I think it's just like, it's us having to let go of our like ego as a race, I feel like, and just like accept help. But then again, when you see that help being taken to the next level, that's when you say, okay, you gotta, step down, but that's how I feel.
I would say there's a lot of white saviorism going on.
Yes.
Within certain people. I mean, I cannot identify the entirety of, the white majority who comes out and supports as white saviors. I don't think that that's all of their hearts and all of their minds. I think some of them are very good people. A lot of them are probably very good people. And some of them may have intentions I don't necessarily understand, which is what white saviorism is. I am going to come and I am going to make this better for you. My presence here will make this better for you. I mean, at the protest I was at, the girl leading the chants was this 16-year-old white girl.
Yeah.
She had like pink hair and like grungy shorts on, and I was like, this is why is nobody else saying anything? Why? What about this makes us uncomfortable? What makes us feel like we can't say anything right now? Is it the fact that we're being led down the street and directed by police? Is there some discomfort there that we think that we can't say things like, screw the corrupt police or whatever was being chanted? I can't quite remember. But
I have a feeling it wasn't
Are we
screw the
scared?
police.
Are we uncomfortable? Yeah, what about that makes us feel uncomfortable? Why are we allowing the white people to come in and take over? Presence is a difference than, leadership.
Presence is different. Yeah, I like that.
All right.
I'm writing that
Garrett.
down.
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings on it, just like I feel like everybody here does. I think that is going to be some level of co-opting with any movement, especially the wider the movement is. And this movement is wide by necessity. Like, since we need white people, there is going to be some co-opting. I think it's important that we keep our eyes on the ball, which, all of us, since we're talking about this, we are paying attention to that. And we just need to make sure that the messaging doesn't get too far away from what our realities are. And we need to make sure it continues to go in the right direction by lending our voice. And I think the thing that I take comfort in is that I have had white friends that have asked me, what do I do? And while that is frustrating and tiresome, that actually means that there are white people that are listening instead of trying to co-opt. So, it's a double-edged sword, but I think as long as we keep lending our voices to the movement, as we encourage white people to lend their voices, we will be okay.
I guess that puts it to me, because this guy over there is older than I am, so I get to go next. So you just need to be quiet for a second.
Okay.
I don't know as this has been co-opted, because I don't know as anybody was really clear what the movement was to begin with. There's a lot of people talking about Black Lives Matter. I don't really even know what Black Lives Matter as an organization really is. This was really a moment that I guess what we all saw where folks were on George Floyd's neck, and we all really kind of let out a collective, get off my neck, dog.
Right.
That was just too much. And we haven't yet found what will appease us. What are we looking for? We're not looking to, be able to ride in certain parts of buses or things like that. At this point in time, we really need to find out what is it that we're looking for. Is it we're looking to improve the rights of people to be able to exercise their franchise and make sure that they can vote and make sure that those laws are in place so that people can actually have some self-destiny? As I was, and I'm going past my 90 seconds, but I just, and for the first time ever, actually took in the whole letter from Birmingham jail. And one of the things that, he was there for was because there were counties where it was a vast majority of black people in those counties, and they never won an election. None of the laws were ever such that they benefited black people, because black people weren't given the franchise to be able to vote. So they knew what they were fighting for. We're not so sure in this one. At least I haven't heard anybody be clear as to where I could devote my energy to help the cause. That's it.
Well, very quickly, I do believe that the movement has been co-opted, and in part because, for the very reasons that you stated, Dewey, is I think it was very narrow at the beginning. What we were talking about was police brutality. That's what the kneeling was originally about, Kaepernick. We were talking about police brutality. And then suddenly now we're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff, healthcare and other stuff. And they're singing the Black National Anthem, which is a beautiful song. I've always loved it. NBA is going to paint stuff. And I'm looking around going, I've never met one black person that asked for any of that. What we have asked for is police to stop killing us. As you said, get off our neck, dog. That's what the movement was about. And I think it's morphed into other things. We end up with Chaz and and all kinds of other things. But that said, and I see people's mouths drop open at that, and we're going to have to leave it there because we're out of time. But I want to thank you all, Garrett, Ashe, my nephew, my niece and play daughter, Haley Evans, my number 3 son, Samuel X, Sam Phillips. It's just been such a great pleasure to have you on and to hear your thoughts. And it's very clear we got to have you back, either as a group or individually, because you've got a lot to offer in these conversations. And we want you to come back as well here next week at 6 o'clock Pacific time. That's 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in the Central and Mountain times. Join us next week for another episode of the Brooks Brothers. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
If you guys made it through, I appreciate you guys watching the whole thing. Let me know what you guys think. Obviously, this is just it's just a family talking. But I figured it might be constructive to people who don't normally get this perspective. There are black people that don't normally get this perspective because they grew up differently. We all have different experiences, although our experiences are linked in that we are all black. Also, there are, of course, white people that don't get to hear conversations like this, so hopefully this is helpful to a number of different audiences. Anyway, guys, make sure you like and subscribe so that one day, one person might see this video. I appreciate you. Talk to you later.